Hey guys, I'm the star of today's video. So yeah, I'm gonna show you how to make this little guy in today's video. And, well, it's not a surprise because you've seen the title, but stay tuned to find out how you can win one of these guys. But before that, I'm gonna show you how to make them. So, roll footage. Okay, so here we go, just drawing around a template that I made out of cardboard, and we need two of these, one for the front and one for the back. So once they're both cut out, plan out where you want the eyes and the nose to go. I also sketched a heart on the stomach of this one, but I realised at about this point that it would have been smarter to use a stencil for a better shape and placement, but it worked out alright in the end. Once you've figured out your button placements, you can start to sew them on. So in order to do that, put your needle through the material and give yourself about 1/8 of an inch between where it goes in and where it comes back out. And then you're going to pull it through, but not all the way through. Leave about 1 inch of tail left. Then get your button and put it through one of the holes, and then take it back through the other hole. Make sure your button's the right way around so you're not sewing it onto the material face down. And then you're going to get your needle to go back through the hole that you initially put it through. And that's going to help to secure your button to the fabric. And then from there it's pretty basic. You're just going to keep going through the fabric and through the button just a few times over. If you need to, move your button around a little bit on the fabric, make sure it's where you want it to be. And then as the needle comes back through, just make sure you're catching that hole. And then putting the needle back through the hole again when you're taking it back through the fabric. And once you're done with that bit, push the needle through the fabric so it's between the fabric and the button. And then you're just going to wrap the thread around the bottom of the button. This cinches together all of the threads and makes the button a little bit more sturdy. Now push the needle back through the fabric so at the back, and we're going to do something very similar to what we did at the start. We're going to put the needle through the fabric but keep it on the back side, so go in and back out with only a tiny bit of fabric in between the two spaces, like so. And then before you pull it tight, pull the needle through the loop of fabric so that it forms a knot. And then I like to do this 3 times. I only did it twice on this just as a demo to show you guys how to do it, because pale pink fabric and white thread is very difficult to see, so I decided it would be easier to see it if I did it with the black thread. And that's it, your button is now sewn on. And it's pretty sturdy. It's not going to be going anywhere unless you actually cut it off. Now we've got the buttons sewn on, let's sew the teddy together. So first step is to place the teddy together with the right sides facing each other, because we sew it this way around so that you don't see the stitches on the outside when it's done. Then just get some pins and pin it together. Try and keep the edges level. You poke the pin through the fabric and then back through the fabric. To do it all the way around, I'm trying to keep the edges level. don't forget to leave a gap so that you can turn the teddy right way around once it's sewn, about 2 inches. When it's all pinned, it'll look something like this. Yes, this is a rabbit, but something like this. And then, thread your needle. And once it's threaded, we're going to sew the bird together with backstitch. So when you backstitch, you're kind of working backwards. So if you look very closely, the needle goes in at the base of the previous stitch, and you pull it through, and then when you bring it back to the right side of the fabric, you're putting the needle through about a stitch length away from the previous stitch, because then you go back through the previous hole and fill in the space that you created. And you're going to want to do this almost all the way around there, but don't forget about the little 2-inch space so that we can turn the bird right side round and stuff it. So when we get around to the end, we need to cast off. Casting off and casting on is actually the same thing, and it's not too dissimilar from sewing a button on. So once you finish your last stitch, you go back in where you initially went in from the wrong side to the right side, and then you're just going over the same stitch that you've already made. Going back over it, and then back over it a third time is where I usually leave it. We go in, we pull it through, and we go back again. At which point you can just unthread your needle. Job done. The next step is to turn the stuffy the right way round now, so that we can finish it and stuff it. Be gentle as you turn it inside out, but you're probably not going to break it, so don't worry about that, just be gentle with it. Occasionally you might come across a body part that's reluctant, so what I do is I get a pencil that has never been sharpened and just use that to push it the right way round. We do this for the rest of the stuffy using the pencil to turn out any reluctant sections, and then he's ready to be stuffed. And now we're going to stuff him. I used Polyfill Ultra Plush, but you can use any stuffing. Break your stuffing into smaller parts and start with the extremities, and just keep going until he's as cuddly as you want him to be. Don't forget to stuff all of it, including right up to the opening. You can always poke it back inside to sew him shut later. So now he's all stuffed, we have to sew him shut. Don't forget to tuck in the seam allowance to make it nice and straight. I'm going to use an overstitch, but you can use a ladder stitch or a slip stitch if you know how to do that. To do an overstitch, start by going into the seam and pulling it through with a little tail like before. And then you're going to put the needle in again from the wrong side and make another stitch next to the first one about 1/8 of an inch away. So the thread loops over the stuffy before going into the next stitch, and you're just going to do this right the way along the opening. Don't forget to overlap it a little bit at each end where it's already closed, just to make it a little bit more secure and less likely to undo. Once you get to the end, I like to finish it off by running the needle underneath these stitches that you've just done. So start at the end and just push your needle underneath the stitches until almost the whole needle is covered, and then you pull it through, and repeat that until you reach the bottom of the seam you just sewed. Pull it tight, and then skip a stitch and feed the needle back in from where it just came out. And when you reach the end of this bit, you don't pull the needle out, you stick it through the leg and pull it out the other side at the seam. Once you've pulled it through, just go ahead and unthread your needle and then pull the thread tight so that you're pulling it tight from the seam you just sealed, and cut it, and then the tail's going to disappear inside the leg. And that's it. Massage him a little bit, make him back to shape, and he's all stuffed now, just needs a face. I found it's easier to map out the face before you start, so use an ultra fine point Sharpie and map out the nose and the mouth. This helps you to not go wonky when you're actually sewing it because you have guidelines to follow. Take your time with this bit. It's much better to be slow and have a face that you're happy with than to rush it and have a face that you wish you'd spent more time on. Next, I just threaded an embroidery needle with embroidery floss, went in at the seam, and then just filled in the nose and mouth using backstitch and my guidelines as an example of where to go. And then when you finish with the face, for your last stitch, you go in and then you push it out again at the seam like we did when we finished sewing him closed earlier. Pull the needle through, pull the thread tight, snip it, and watch the tail disappear like we did before. And hey presto, that's him all finished. Now you have a stuffy. So I hope you liked that. I found it informative perhaps. In hindsight, this one is the one that I made first with black thread, which I now realise was a bad idea. But considering after talking to my mum, I found out that I haven't sewed since I was 10 or 11, so that's like 15 years. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with these guys. I made this one first, and just gave him a little tie. It's not a tie, it's just some string that's tied in a bow because it's cute. Then secondly, I made this rabbit, which is a bit neater, sewed it with white thread. You know, it's better. And then I made this one, and then this one. So if you do want the chance to win one of these guys, just drop me a comment below, and the first 4 people to comment will be the people who get them. Don't forget, I do have cats, so if you want one of these guys, just beware that I don't think there's any fur or anything stitched into it, but if you're allergic, then just bear that in mind. Like I said in my last video, I am looking at doing a Q&A, so drop those questions down in the comments as well. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a like if you liked it, subscribe, which is still down there, and other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye!